My wife and her family despised me for being a mechanic, and she cheated with her coworker, but when she filed for divorce, thinking she'd take everything. I already owned the shop and had refinanced the house in secret, and the judge left them speechless. I'm 32 years old. I work as a mechanic. Well, I worked as a mechanic. Now I technically own the shop, but that part comes later. And I need to tell this story because what happened in the last 2 years basically showed me that no matter how hard you work or how much you love someone, there are people who will always see you as less just because you get your hands dirty working. My ex-wife Lauren was one of those people, though it took me years to realize it. I met Lauren about 6 years ago when she brought her 2015 Honda Accord to the shop where I worked. It had a cooling system problem, nothing major, but she was super stressed because she needed the car for work. I was 26 then, she was 24, and I remember when I explained the problem and gave her an honest estimate. She looked at me, surprised. Like, I can't believe a mechanic is talking to me like a normal person. That should have been a red flag. But I was young, and she was beautiful. You know how it is. We started talking the time she brought in the car, and eventually I asked for her number. To my surprise, she said yes. The first few months were amazing. Honestly. Lauren worked in marketing for a mid-sized company in the next town over. Nothing fancy, but she was ambitious, always talking about promotions and professional connections. I worked long shifts at the shop, sometimes up to 10 hours a day, but I liked my job. My boss, Mr. Thompson, was a good guy who had taught me everything since I started at 19. The shop wasn't fancy or anything, but we had a good reputation and loyal customers. Lauren's family never fully accepted me. I knew that from the start. Her brother Austin, a 8-year-old guy who sold used cars but acted like he was CEO of a Fortune 500 company, always looked at me with contempt. Her father Raymond was worse, a small-time real estate developer who thought he was Donald Trump or something. At family dinners, they'd make these passive-aggressive comments, like, "Oh, Eric, working with your hands must be very satisfying," or "I guess someone has to do that kind of work." Lauren would always laugh awkwardly, but never defended me, and I like an idiot thought they'd change their minds over time. My sister Catherine, who's 2 years older than me and works as a nurse, warned me from day one. She told me, "Eric, that girl sees you as a project, not as a partner." But I was in love, or whatever you feel. At 26, when you meet someone who seems out of your league, I ignored all the red flags because Lauren was affectionate with me in private, and I thought that was enough. After 2 years of dating, we got married. It was a small wedding because I didn't have much money saved, and Lauren wanted something intimate anyway. Her family paid for most of it, which made me uncomfortable, but Lauren insisted it didn't matter. 6 months after the wedding, I found a house for sale. Nothing ostentatious. 3 bedrooms, 2 bathrooms, but it was ours, and that excited me. The problem was, my credit alone wasn't enough for the full mortgage, so Raymond offered to co-sign. At the time, I thought it was a generous gesture, that he was finally accepting me into the family. How naive I was, seriously. The first 2 years of marriage were good, or at least that's what I believed. I kept working at the shop, saving every penny I could because I had plans I hadn't told anyone about yet. Mr. Thompson was like 68 years old and had mentioned several times that he was thinking about retiring soon. I wanted to buy the business when that happened, but I needed capital and preparation. So, secretly, I started taking online business administration classes at night after Lauren fell asleep. I was also saving aggressively, living on the minimum while Lauren spent on clothes and outings with her work friends. About 3 years ago, Lauren got promoted to marketing manager. Suddenly, she started coming home late, saying she had to stay for meetings or networking events. At first, I didn't. I think anything weird? I was happy for her, but then the signs started that I couldn't ignore. I noticed strange charges on our shared account, dinners at expensive restaurants on days she supposedly was working late. When I'd ask her, she always had an excuse. They were work meals or team celebrations. Then there were the physical changes. Lauren started going to the gym religiously, bought new, more revealing clothes, changed her perfume. One night, she came home around 11, and I was still up watching TV. I tried to kiss her and she pulled away, saying she was tired and wanted to shower first. When she came out of the shower, I noticed she wasn't wearing her wedding ring. I asked her where it was, and she said she'd taken it off at work because it bothered her when typing. That excuse didn't make sense because it had never bothered her before, but I let it go. The truth is, I didn't want to believe what my gut was telling me. I kept working, kept saving, kept taking my online classes. Mr. Thompson finally told me he was ready to sell, that if I was interested, we could talk numbers. It was the best news of my life, but I decided not to tell Lauren anything until I had everything closed. Something told me I should keep it secret, and it turns out that instinct saved me. Everything exploded about a year and a half ago. One of Lauren's coworkers, Monica, came to the shop to fix her car. Monica and I knew each other from company events where I used to accompany Lauren before she started going alone. Monica looked uncomfortable when I helped her, and finally she asked if we could talk privately. She pulled me aside and said, "Eric, I don't know if I should tell you this, but everyone at the office knows that Lauren is having an affair with Jeremy from the sales department." I froze. She continued, "Lauren has told everyone that you two are separated, that you moved out months ago. I'm here thinking you were still together because she never mentioned anything." I thanked Monica for telling me and went home early that day. I checked everything, bank statements, text messages that Lauren left her phone while sleeping, her social media. The evidence was there, clear as day. Messages with someone named Jeremy, where they said, "I love you," and planned to meet at hotels. Photos on Instagram where Lauren had edited to cut me out of the images. Expenses at hotels and romantic restaurants on days she supposedly worked late. But here's the thing. I didn't confront Lauren immediately. I know, it sounds weird, but I had a plan. At that time, I was in the final stages of buying Mr. Thompson's shop. I had secured a small business loan plus my savings, and we were about to close the deal. If I confronted Lauren and asked for a divorce before that, her family could complicate things, especially Raymond, who was co-signer on the house. So I waited, gathered evidence, acted like everything was normal, while inside I was dying of rage and betrayal. During those 3 months I waited, Lauren became more careless. She'd leave her phone unlocked, come home smelling like men's cologne. I even once found a hotel receipt in her purse. It was obvious she thought I was too dumb to notice, or maybe she just didn't care. Her work friends started treating me weird when I'd see them, with that pity in their eyes that tells you everyone knows something you supposedly don't know. Thompson sold me the business for a fair price, and I officially became the owner. I didn't tell Lauren anything. She still thought I was just an employee earning my mechanic's salary. And that same week I hired a lawyer, a guy named Marcus that my sister Catherine recommended. I showed him all the evidence I'd compiled and told him the situation. Marcus told me I had a solid case for divorce and that I should act soon, especially considering the house issue with Raymond as co-signer. The moment of confrontation came on a Friday night. I left the shop early, like at 4 in the afternoon, and drove home. When I arrived, Lauren's car was in the driveway along with an Audi I didn't recognize. Something made me check through the living room window before entering, and there they were, Lauren and a guy I assumed was Jeremy, on my couch, kissing like teenagers. My heart was beating so hard I thought I was going to have a heart attack. My hands were shaking as I opened the door with my keys. Lauren's face when she saw me was pure panic. Jeremy stood up so fast he almost fell, trying to button his shirt. I remember the only thing I could say was, "You have 5 minutes to get out of my house." Lauren started with the excuses. "Eric, I can explain. This isn't what it looks like." But I interrupted her and said, "I know everything, Lauren. I know about the affair. I know you told everyone we're separated. I know about the hotels and the lies. Now get your stuff and leave." Jeremy practically ran to the door without saying anything. The coward. Lauren tried to approach me, but I told her not to even think about touching me. She started crying, saying she made a mistake, that she still loved me. All the garbage cheaters say when they get caught. I told her she had an hour to pack her essential things and that she could pick up the rest later with supervision. She went to the bedroom, and I stayed in the living room, still processing what had just happened. 20 minutes later, I heard aggressive knocking on the door. I opened it, and there were Raymond and Austin, both looking furious. Lauren had obviously called them. Raymond started yelling that this was his house too because he had co-signed it, that I couldn't kick out his daughter. Austin was behind him, playing his protective brother role, saying I was a loser and that Lauren deserved better. I told them to get off my property or I'd call the police. Raymond tried to push me and force his way in, so I took out my phone and dialed 911. The police arrived in 10 minutes. I explained the situation, showed them the deed to the house that was in my name only, despite Raymond being co-signer on the loan, and told them I wanted them to supervise Lauren's exit because her family was being aggressive. The officers were professional. They told Raymond and Austin to calm down, or they'd be arrested for disturbing the peace. Lauren packed her suitcases, crying while her father and brother looked at me with pure hatred. Before leaving, Raymond told me, "You're going to regret this. I'm going to make sure you lose everything." The following week, I officially hired Marcus as my divorce attorney, and we filed the papers. Lauren received the notification at her work, which probably humiliated her in front of all her colleagues who knew about the affair. 2 days later, I received a letter from Lauren's lawyer, representing her along with her father, Raymond. The letter was ridiculous. They demanded half the value of the house, half of my shop tools, which according to them, had significant value, and alimony, because Lauren had become accustomed to a certain lifestyle during our marriage. What they didn't know was that I had already refinanced the house 3 months earlier, removing Raymond as co-signer. I used part of the business loan and my savings to make a large payment and qualified a loan for the new mortgage. I had kept this secret specifically for this moment. I also had all the evidence of the affair, text messages, photos, hotel receipts, everything documented and dated. The first court hearing was a circus. Lauren arrived dressed like she was going to a job interview, probably thinking she was going to impress the judge. Her lawyer, a pompous guy named Richard, presented their case painting me as a simple mechanic who had benefited from Lauren's family's financial support. He literally said, "Your Honor, my client comes from an established business family. While Mr. Eric barely earns enough repairing cars, it's only fair that she receives compensation for the years she invested in this marriage." Raymond and Austin were at the hearing, nodding with every word, like they were in a cult. Catherine was also there supporting me, and I could see she was about to explode with rage at every classist comment they made. Lauren's lawyer continued, "My client deserves half of the marital assets, including Mr. Eric's professional tools, which we estimate are worth between $15,000 to $20,000. We also request half of the house equity, which is significant considering that Mr. Raymond was instrumental in securing the property." My lawyer Marcus barely spoke at that first hearing. He just listened and took notes. The judge, a woman about 50 years old named Foster, reviewed the preliminary documents and scheduled a second hearing for a month later, giving time for discovery and presentation of additional evidence. Lauren and her family left the court looking confident, probably thinking they'd won. During that month, Marcus did his magic. He compiled all the business documentation, the financial statements of the shop that now belonged to me, the evidence of Lauren's affair, and the documentation of the house refinancing. He also discovered that Jeremy, Lauren's lover, was married too, something Lauren apparently didn't know or didn't care about. Marcus contacted Jeremy's wife, and she happily provided more evidence of the affair, including messages Jeremy had sent her talking about Lauren. The second hearing was completely different. Marcus started by presenting the evidence of the affair. Not just text messages, but also testimonies from coworkers like Monica, who confirmed that Lauren had been saying we were separated when it wasn't true. Judge Foster reviewed everything with a serious expression, while Lauren got paler and paler. Then came the bomb. Marcus presented documents showing that I was now the owner of the shop, not just an employee. He showed financial statements revealing that the business was worth approximately $450,000 between assets, inventory, and established clientele. He also presented evidence of the administration classes I'd taken in secret, my business plan, everything demonstrating that I had been preparing for this for years. Lauren's face was priceless, like she couldn't even close her mouth from shock. Her lawyer Richard immediately turned red and started stammering something about hidden assets, but Marcus cut him off by presenting the exact timing of each transaction, demonstrating that everything had been legal and that I had used my own funds and loans in my name. But Marcus wasn't done. He presented the documentation of the house refinancing, showing that Raymond was no longer a cosigner and had no legal rights over the property. Judge Foster looked at Raymond, who was sitting behind Lauren, and asked him directly if he had contributed financially to the house beyond the initial cosign. Raymond stuttered, something about how his signature had been essential. But the judge told him that didn't give him ownership rights, only responsibility for the loan that now didn't even exist anymore. Lauren's lawyer tried to argue that the affair was irrelevant to asset division, but Marcus quickly presented legal precedents showing that infidelity definitely was relevant, especially when one party had spent marital money on the affair, as Lauren had done with the hotels and dinners with Jeremy. Marcus also mentioned that Lauren had earned more than me during the last 3 years of our marriage, which technically made her the one who should pay alimony if anyone was paying it. Judge Foster took a 15-minute recess to review all the evidence. When she returned, her verdict was clear. She said it was obvious the marriage had ended due to Lauren's infidelity, that I had managed my finances responsibly and legally, and that there was no basis to give Lauren any portion of the business or the tools that were instruments of my profession. Regarding the house, given that it was in my name and I had refinanced, eliminating Raymond, the house was completely mine. The judge ordered that Lauren must vacate any remaining belongings from the house within 2 weeks under supervision, that I would have to pay only 3 months of transitional support of $1,200 a month to give her time to establish herself, and that each of us would keep our own assets and debts. Lauren started crying right there in court, and Raymond stood up yelling that this was an injustice, that the system was corrupt. Judge Foster threatened him with contempt of court if he didn't calm down. We left the court, and Catherine hugged me so tight I could barely breathe. Marcus shook my hand and told me I'd handled everything perfectly, that it had been one of the most satisfying cases of his career because normally men in my position end up losing everything. Lauren, her family, and her lawyer left without saying a word, but the looks they gave me were pure hatred. The following months were strange. Lauren complied with the order to pick up her things. She came with a moving company, and her mother avoided making eye contact with me the whole time. We signed the final divorce papers 6 weeks later and officially stopped being married. I felt free for the first time in years, but also empty somehow, like I'd lost years of my life with someone who never really valued me. The story doesn't end there. It turns out Jeremy, Lauren's lover, faced his own consequences. His wife left him immediately after everything came to light, and the company where both he and Lauren worked had to intervene because company policies prohibited relationships between employees that created conflicts of interest. Jeremy was demoted and eventually transferred to another office in a different state. And here's the best part. Lauren told me this herself in a pathetic text message about 2 months after the NTNC divorce, telling me that Jeremy had left her as soon as he realized she wasn't going to receive any money from the divorce. The guy was only with her because he thought she was his ticket to a better life. Ironic considering she was doing the same thing to me, but in reverse. Lauren lost her reputation at work too. Monica told me later that everyone at the office saw her differently after the affair and divorce came out, especially because she had lied about our separation. Lauren eventually quit about 6 months later, and according to Catherine, who has a friend who knows someone who worked there, she had trouble finding another job in marketing because our industry is small in this town and gossip travels fast. Raymond also suffered consequences. His reputation as a real estate developer got tarnished because word spread about how he'd acted during the divorce, trying to claim ownership over a house that legally wasn't his. He lost some contracts and clients who didn't want to associate with someone like that. Austin is still Austin, an idiot who works in used car sales and probably will always blame the world for his problems. My business, on the other hand, is thriving. The shop has more clients than ever. I hired 2 additional mechanics last year, and I'm in the process of opening a second location in the neighboring town. It turns out having your own business and being respected for your work is much more satisfying than being married to someone who sees you as inferior. Catherine continues to be my biggest support, always reminds me that she warned me, but that she's proud of how I handled everything. Last week I saw Lauren by chance. I was in the supermarket parking lot and she drove by in her car, an older Toyota than the Honda she had when I met her. She saw me and accelerated quickly, but not before I noticed she drove past my house. the one she almost lost. I've completely renovated it. New paint, new yard, installed a 2-car garage. It looks amazing, and it's completely mine. I'm not going to lie and say I'm completely over all this. There are nights where I still think about the years I lost, about the signs I ignored because I was in love or because I wanted to believe in something. But I also learned that it doesn't matter where you come from or what you do for a living, you have value. I don't need someone to validate that for me, especially not someone whose family looked down on me for working with my hands while they could barely keep their own businesses afloat. Catherine asked me the other day if I would ever forgive Lauren. I told her the truth. I don't know. Part of me already forgave her simply to be able to move forward, but another part will never forget how she made me feel, how she betrayed me not just with the affair but with every disparaging comment about my work, every time she didn't defend me in front of her family, every lie she told her colleagues about our supposed separation. That doesn't erase easily. What I do know is that I'm doing well now. I have a successful business, a house I love, a sister who's always there for me, and the satisfaction of having stood up for myself when everyone thought I was going to lose. Judge Foster basically validated everything I'd worked for during years, and that feeling of vindication was better than any apology Lauren could have given me. I guess in the end the story is simple. They underestimated the mechanic, and the mechanic won.